Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. As an obvious distraction to the release of the first trailer for the woke Star Wars series, The Acolyte, as created by Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant Leslie Headland, the trades also reported that George Lucas has endorsed Bob Iger and the existing Disney board in a written statement that clearly uses language that was written for him by Disney. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please subscribe to this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! The fact that the first trailer for The Acolyte was carefully scheduled to come out on the same day as an endorsement from George Lucas for Bob Iger was clearly no coincidence. Releasing both on the same day was obviously intended to distract from each other and to act as a tacit endorsement of what Disney has done to destroy the Star Wars franchise. How bizarre it is for George Lucas to endorse Bob Iger and the current Disney board of directors when this is the same man who called Iger, Kathleen Kennedy, and the Disney board white slave traders immediately after The Force Awakens premiered in 2015. So the real question is this: what did Bob Iger agree to do for George Lucas in order to obtain this endorsement? Because nothing in Hollywood is done without a price. And the way that this endorsement is written, it's very obvious that George Lucas did not write it himself. The endorsement was clearly written for him by Disney using Disney-esque language for him to give his stamp of approval. So let's read this endorsement together from Deadline. Creating magic is not for amateurs. Does Disney actually think that people would believe that George Lucas would use the phrase creating magic? This phraseology is so obvious that this was written for Lucas as a way to try and convince shareholders to vote for Bob Iger and the existing board of directors. And it shows just how desperate Bob Iger and the existing board are to keep Nelson Peltz and former Disney CFO Jay Rasulo from becoming part of the Disney board. The voting in the Disney board proxy fight has to be a lot closer than they want to publicly admit. But reading onward, when I sold Lucasfilm just over a decade ago, I was delighted to become a Disney shareholder because of my longtime admiration for its iconic brand and Bob Iger's leadership. What a load of crap! The way this is written, it sounds like George Lucas is brown-nosing Bob Iger. But what the hell for? What is George Lucas getting for this by making such absurd claims? When Bob recently returned to the company during a difficult time, I was relieved. This is such complete and utter bilge. It sounds like Bob Iger was waiting just outside the door of a bathroom when George Lucas found himself out of toilet paper and only Iger had a fresh roll. No one knows Disney better. Seriously? You mean out of the tens of thousands of people who currently work for Disney, and the hundreds of thousands who once worked for that company don't know it as well as Bob Iger? When did George Lucas ever work for Disney or sit on its board to know how well Bob Iger knows the company as compared with anyone else? That line was just pure nonsense. I remain a significant shareholder because I have full faith and confidence in the power of Disney and Bob's track record of driving long-term value. You mean to tell me that George Lucas is happy that his Disney stock lost nearly half its value over the past couple of years under Iger's leadership? I have voted all my shares for Disney's 12 directors and urge other shareholders to do the same. I don't know what Bob Iger is giving to George Lucas to agree to put his name to this absurd endorsement, especially since this is the same Bob Iger who admittedly misled Lucas about using the treatments that he wrote himself to base the Star Wars sequel trilogy on. But by giving his endorsement, George Lucas is also tacitly endorsing all of the damage that Kathleen Kennedy has inflicted, not only on the Star Wars franchise, but also upon the Willow and Indiana Jones franchises too. And that includes his tacit endorsement of The Acolyte as written and produced by Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant Leslie Headland. George Lucas is going to be 80 years old in May. And I highly doubt that he has any desire of coming back to these franchises or working on them ever again. So whatever he got from Bob Iger for his endorsement, it was probably just some cold hard cash. So now let's talk about the trailer for The Acolyte. And I'd like to ask you to bear something in mind throughout this discussion. Trailers are advertisements designed to make the finished and much longer products look as good as they possibly can. And to do that, they may focus on irrelevant content or characters who barely show up in the finished product at all, or they may include content that, in their minds, is the most exciting in the finished product, with the caveat of not revealing too much of the plot. Thus, trailers may mislead viewers into believing that some content is far more relevant than it actually is in the finished product. And what's contained in the trailer for The Acolyte most definitely tries to make the case that it's a highly relevant and exciting part of the Star Wars franchise. But is it? Well, for better or worse, The Acolyte is becoming part of the Star Wars franchise as envisioned by Kathleen Kennedy and Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, Leslie Headland. The trailer is around 1 minute 45 seconds long, and it begins in what appears to be the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where a Jedi is seen teaching a group of younglings saying, quote, "Close your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them," unquote. That's 13 words, and it's actually nothing that we haven't heard before, because Obi-Wan Kenobi essentially said that same thing to Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars for A New Hope in 1977, which was 47 years ago. So that's hardly original, but it's extremely nostalgic, especially in an effort to get as many people as possible to watch the show. Now, when I said those 13 words, I spoke them in under 5 seconds. But in the first scene from the trailer, it takes the Jedi character being played by actor Jung-jae around 16 seconds to say them emotively, and with long delays between the 3 short lines, and even between some of the words themselves, combined with some somewhat annoying choral music in the background for effect. And unfortunately, the long delays are reminiscent of the frequent delays between lines in Dave Filoni's live-action series Ahsoka that premiered last August and ultimately became the least viewed Star Wars show on Disney+, as I had talked about in multiple videos that I had released last year. So it's entirely possible that The Acolyte is going to be similar in that regard. Now, as for George Lucas's endorsement of Bob Iger and the current Disney Board of Directors, I would encourage shareholders to apply those same 13 words to his statement. Quote, "Close your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them," unquote. Then for 4 seconds, the trailer shows the back of a woman dressed in a purple Jedi robe, who is in fact the character being played by Amandla Stenberg. Then the trailer returns to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, with Jung-jae's character saying, quote, "Tell me what comes into your mind," unquote, before switching back at 23 seconds to the woman in purple as she enters a restaurant. We then don't get another piece of spoken dialogue for another 5 seconds, when it then switches back to the Jedi Temple again to hear the first youngling chime in and say, quote, "Life," unquote. And that puts us at 29 seconds into the trailer, which is slightly more than 1/4 of the way through, and there hasn't really been all that much action yet. But then the trailer switches back to the woman in purple with a second youngling speaking a line in the background saying, quote, "Balance," unquote, without switching back to the Jedi Temple. But then the trailer does switch back for a third youngling to chime in and say, quote, "I see fire," unquote, at which point we're at 34 seconds into the trailer as it momentarily goes black. And here I'm going to let you in on something. The third youngling is undoubtedly Amandla Stenberg's character at a much younger age. So the scene in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is undoubtedly a flashback. And I will also point out that one aspect that the trailer goes to great lengths to emphasize is how diverse the cast of the Acolyte show is. So while there's no verbal messaging in the trailer, that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be any in the finished product. When the trailer comes back from blackness, for about 3 or 4 seconds as the music starts to intensify, we see Carrie-Anne Moss's Jedi character in brown Jedi robes slowly turning her head towards the camera. Maybe she should get an Emmy for most effective head turn towards the camera. Then, as the music becomes darker, the trailer shows an 8-second clip of a fight scene between Carrie-Anne Moss's character and who is probably Amanda Stenberg's character wearing a black pandemic-style cloth face mask over her nose and mouth. But as far as costuming goes, I think that the show could have spent a little more money on a more impressive face mask than on some cheap pandemic-era black cloth face masks that you can buy for a few bucks at a drugstore. Anywho, we're now at around 48 seconds into the trailer, or about 47.5%, when it switches to a black screen with the words, "This June," before returning at 50 seconds in, where we see Amanda Stenberg's back again in a darkened room as she walks up behind some older white male Jedi with someone in the background saying, quote, "Someone is killing Jedi," unquote, which is the first new piece of dialogue since the third youngling said, quote, "I see fire," unquote, at 34 seconds. So let's see. Amanda Stenberg's character is apparently killing Jedi, and she had scary visions of fire when she was a youngling. I could write better shit than that. Then moments later, we see Amanda Stenberg's character trying to stab the old white male Jedi as he meditates, because he's undoubtedly a very unimportant character, and probably even more so because he's an old white male. Gotta get that subliminal messaging into the trailer somehow. The trailer then switches to two young Jedi, a blonde, bluish-skinned woman and a young male who's brandishing a yellow lightsaber inside of a cave at around 53 seconds, which is roughly the halfway point in the trailer. Then another young male Jedi, who happens to be white, says, quote, "It doesn't make sense," unquote. It's kind of like he's a bit clueless, but I can't imagine why. Maybe it's some more subliminal messaging in the trailer. Then there's a pointless brief scene of 8 Jedi with their backs turned standing next to a dilapidated shack looking into a misty forest. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Then at 56 seconds in, the trailer shows what I assume is the Wookiee character being portrayed by actor Juna Suotamo, before switching to another old white guy being asked by Jung-jae's Jedi character, quote, "What happened?" unquote, in a rather deadpan, nearly emotionless style at 59 seconds in. Then someone in the background says, quote, "I sensed darkness," unquote, at around 1 minute in, as the trailer then changes scenes once again to a ship heading towards a castle, before quickly switching to a scene with Jung-jae's Jedi character being confronted by Amanda Stenberg's character, and she's still wearing her black pandemic-style cloth face mask over her nose and mouth as she wants to fight him. Is this supposed to be impressive or scary yet? Well, since I and hundreds of millions of other people wore that exact same type of face mask for months while in public during the height of the pandemic, I don't think that it's impressive, scary, or particularly interesting in terms of costuming. What I will say though is that everything up to this point in the trailer is essentially just generic Republic-era Star Wars with a little bit of fighting styles used in movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon without defying gravity. Then at 1 minute and 6 seconds in, the trailer shows a black screen with the message, "In an age of light," before switching at 1 minute and 7.5 seconds in to a scene of a tall green-skinned Jedi either lazily or pretending to use the Force to open sliding doors. Why is that in the trailer? I don't know, because it's completely without context and the green-skinned Jedi doesn't show up again. But since they have faster-than-light travel, you'd think that they would have automatic sliding doors. The trailer then very briefly shows some young, unknown Asian guy peeking around a wall, before switching to a darkened scene at 1 minute and 9 seconds showing 7 Jedi standing in a triangular formation. The frontmost Jedi is Carrie-Anne Moss's character, and it includes the Wookiee that I assume is being played by Juna Suotamo, but none of them say anything before the trailer switches to another black screen with the message, "The darkness rises," at 1 minute and 11 seconds. Now, if that message is supposed to evoke some kind of emotional excitement, it doesn't work on me because I already know that this is supposed to be pre-Phantom Menace. Then the trailer has yet another brief Crouching Tiger-esque battle clip between Carrie-Anne Moss's character and Amanda Stenberg's character, still wearing the same pandemic-era black face mask. Then at 1 minute 15 seconds in, we finally see Jodie Turner-Smith's character surrounded by other women because, as she said at the 2023 European Star Wars celebration in London, she plays a female leader on a female-centric planet.
Yes, yes.
And then we hear her saying in the background, quote, "This isn't about good or bad," unquote, because the scene in the trailer quickly shifts to a woman running with fire burning in the background. Could it be Amandla Stenberg's character experiencing what she saw when she was a youngling at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant? Imagine that! Is this good writing? Maybe if you regard it as being fan fiction, and we know that Leslie Headland wrote a lot of fan fiction as a child, as she alluded to in an interview that I talked about in a video that I had released on February 29th. Then we see a ship crashing on the surface of an icy planet. How imaginative to go from fire to ice!
Morals for spring. Groundbreaking.
Then at 1 minute 19 seconds in, we see Lee Jung-jae's Jedi character and 2 other Jedi on the icy planet's surface before we hear Jodie Turner-Smith in the background say, quote, "This is about power," unquote, before the trailer switches back to her character. Then at 1 minute 21 seconds, we finally see Amandla Stenberg's face as the woman in the purple Jedi robe, but without her Black Pandemic-era face mask. She's standing on the rocks near an ocean with breaking waves, and Jodie Turner-Smith saying in the background, quote, "And who is allowed to use it," unquote, as the camera angle switches to what Amandla Stenberg is facing. Some other person also on the rocks at 1 minute and 23 seconds in. The scene essentially looks like the same place as in Jar Jar Abrams' dumpster fire of a movie, Star Wars IX: The Rise of Palpatine, when Mary Sue Ray is using her cheap plastic knife wayfinder to find another MacGuffin in the crashed remains of the second Death Star. Disney is just so full of crappy creativity. Then the trailer fades to black with no message and comes back to the young Jedi who had been in the cave earlier, with the young female bluish-skinned Jedi saying, quote, "What is that?" unquote, at around 1 minute 25 seconds in, before a red-beamed lightsaber comes spinning through a forest and cutting through the tree trunks as it gets closer. And that's actually the first and only truly interesting scene in this entire trailer, but it doesn't occur until 1 minute 27 seconds in with less than 20 seconds left. Then at 1 minute 29 seconds, someone grabs onto the spinning red lightsaber, stopping it in mid-flight. We don't see who that is, but Lee Jung-jae's character appears to be there as he unsheaths his blue lightsaber at 1 minute 30 seconds in, next to some white male Jedi who just stands there not reacting and doing absolutely nothing. But then he finally does at 1 minute 31 seconds in, along with 6 other Jedi who all bring out their blue, green, and yellow lightsabers for a total of 8, but at 1 minute 33 seconds, they clearly get pushed back by someone presumably using the dark side of the Force. And then the action portion of the trailer ends and goes to the show's title. Well, folks, as I talked about earlier, this is probably what they regarded as being the best in The Acolyte without giving away too much of the plot, and I only saw one interesting moment in the entire thing. The rest of it wasn't particularly interesting or exciting to me because it was too generic and didn't really show that it was actually all that relevant with regards to the Star Wars timeline. There were no recognizable characters like Yoda, who was part of the Jedi Order during that time period, but he may not even be in the show. Yoda's presence would have made the trailer a lot more impactful than it actually is. But if he's not in the show, nor any other known Jedi who could also be sufficiently long-lived to be present in The Phantom Menace, then there's probably not that much draw for existing Star Wars fans to be all that interested in The Acolyte. All I see in this show is generic Star Wars with generic Jedi, but with a very diverse cast and not much else. After having watched the trailer for The Acolyte, I fully expect that the show will indeed become the least watched Star Wars show on Disney+. And if any genuinely cringe moments do occur in The Acolyte that weren't shown in the trailer, they will just drive even more people away from watching the show. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.